Check out this incredibly simple circuit I made to show how to wire up the motor controller into a motor with only one direction. All right, we have to control this motor controller. This is the L298N motor controller, and it requires 12 volts at 2 amps. So what I did was, rather than buying a new power supply, I just went to the Goodwill and bought this old iHome here, if you remember these here. And I bought both of these pieces, but I only need this. And this was actually a fifth of the price of a brand new one offline. When we write code here, we have to tell Arduino what we're assigning to what. So Arduino understands what an integer is, and that is basically a number being held in a box. So the number here is pin number 8, and the box we get to choose. So we could name this anything we like. We're going to name this motor clock, which is we want the motor to spin clockwise. Likewise, we're going to do integer. We're going to say for it to move the other way, which is counterclockwise, we're going to stick that to pin 9. We could have named this motor positive and motor negative. We could have named it whatever have you, but we're going to stick with these real quickly. For integer, we're going to call one of these boxes the button, and then we're going to stick that in slot 2. So let's come down to the void setup. Just so you remember, this is a one and done. We're just going to define a couple parameters and move on. So the pin mode, which is one of my favorite commands, is what pin and what's your mode. So the motor clock pin is going to be an output, right? We only want this motor to turn. We're not reading anything with this pin. And that's kind of the fun part of Arduino, is we get to do inputs and outputs out of the same pins. So the only problem is you just have to tell Arduino how it works. Likewise, we're going to come down here. For the pin mode, we're going to do a motor counter. So the counterclockwise, and that's also going to be the output. And then the pin mode button, we want that to be an input. And with this button, it's going to be the pull up. There's a resistor to this piece of equipment, and Arduino has to understand how we like it. And in this case, when it pulls up. And of course, we're putting curly brackets at the end of each. Now, in the void loop section here, we're going to make an if statement. And so we're going to do a digital read. And so a digital read that is the terminology that Arduino has. When it receives information, it reads it. And when it sends information out into the world, it writes it. So in this case here, we want to digital read the button and see how it's equals. We're asking it to compare it. So when the button gets pushed, it's in the low state, and we're saying, did the digital read compare it to the low state? If that's the yes, we're going to now digitally write. We're going to modify the outside world with the motor clock is now high. So this motor is now getting the full signal in the clockwise direction. And then do you notice here, the digital write, the motor counterclockwise direction is low, right? Because if we had both high at the same time, it would be fighting against each other, right? You'd have pin 8 and pin 9 both giving full voltage, and the motor won't turn in that case, right? And then look at this else statement here. So if the button is in the high state here, basically nothing happens, right? So we have the digital write motor clockwise. We're not giving it any voltage, as well as the counterclockwise. So let's jump over here. And of course, we're plugged into the USB here. We have a ground going to this button, as well as this is supplying from pin number 2. Pin number 8 and 9 come over here to this motor driver here to in 1 and in 2. We have a cord here. We have our 12 volt on this side and our ground on this side. And then on our out one, which happens to be black, we're just putting that to any side of this DC motor. And likewise, our out two, which is red, is going to the other side. In another world, I would have stripped the wires and soldered these connections, but I just wanted to make it fast. And look at this here. I made sure that the tips of these wires don't touch this metal case and short it out. And when we push the button here, we can see that it will run until I let up on the button. What we're going to do now is we're going to modify the code to see if we understand this. So we're going down to this else statement, and we're going to change this to high. And what we would expect to see is that the moment we upload this code, that motor is going to be turning in the counterclockwise direction. We push the button, and then the motor will turn in the clockwise direction. And when we let off, it'll return to the motor going the counterclockwise direction. Hit the compile, and then of course we're going to upload it. Sometimes we'll have to jump into here and into tools, make sure we're on our board here, and then select this here. Let's see what happens. There we go. In fact, we can hear it right now. Well, maybe I should have hardwired that or taped it to the table, but in any event, you can kind of see what's going on with this motor. What kind of project do you have in mind when you want to use a motor controller? Write in the comments below.